Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, I bought Axiom Verge on Steam during last year's Steam Summer Sale. I had heard good things about this and I wanted to check it out as I love Metroid inspired games when they're done right. That said, I was a bit disappointed by this game. It's not a bad Metroid-esque game, but it's not a great one, especially when I compare it to the likes of Dust and Elysian Tale. It has problems when it comes to its frustration and just some obtuse level progression. That said, it's really not a bad game, and I did enjoy it for the most part. As for the story, you play as a scientist named Trace who gets involved in a lab accident that causes his whole laboratory to blow up. This causes him, for an unknown reason, to be transported to a barren alien planet whose whole society has been wiped out by an unknown pathogen. He is asked by the planet's only survivors, who are a bunch of sentient war machines, to track down and destroy the person involved in distributing the pathogen. Yeah, I'm not even going to pronounce his name, but as Trace journeys, he finds out that he and the main villain are more connected than he realizes in some really bizarre ways too. This game's plot is pretty deep for a game like this. We're talking about deeper than a lot of JRPGs who spend a lot of their times on narrative, which is also a double-edged sword because it doesn't really have time to flesh out some of its ideas. Because a Metroid-esque game, you're going to keep on keeping the gameplay moving because that's the more important part. Still, it's a really great sci-fi story. Yes, this is a Metroid-esque game. However, don't confuse that for a Metroidvania game, as there is no RPG system here, but it does have a few decent spins on the formula. For example, no morph ball item, instead you get drones that are thrown out. No bombs to blow up walls, instead you get items to teleport through them. That said, the whole find your way through the maze to acquire power-up items is still intact in Axiom Verge, and while it is a bit obtuse sometimes, especially towards the end, there is a lot of forward momentum, and I didn't find myself getting lost most of the time. Again, when you get to the end of the game, it does throw a few curveballs. I did find myself questioning where the heck I needed to go towards the end of the game. Where the game fails hard is in its challenge curve. You can find yourself going through and blasting aliens easy enough only to wind up in an area that just stomps you to the ground like crazy, and an area where finding safe spots feels like it can be tricky if not impossible, and it can do these things in a blink of an eye. The last stages are just crazy impossible, and I can't say I really enjoyed the last stretch of the game, unfortunately. Oh well, one more thing I should talk about is when it comes to the game's successes, though, is the amount of weapons and tools you can come across. While the game may be a bit obtuse when it comes to the exploration and the challenge, it's just crazy in the amount of tools you can use to blast your way through. There are several guns to find and unlock, and they all do different things and can be used in certain circumstances. Finding out which one is the best to use against a boss is always a blast. You can unlock a rain gun that also glitches enemies and allows some enemies to be beaten easier when exposed to its ray. I always enjoyed finding the right tools for the job. I just wish the game was a little easier when trying to find out what the tools do and use against what enemies, because, like I said, in later levels the game can just really whoop your butt. The graphics in Axiom Verge are charming and 8-bit looking, but they are also very dark and gritty in the way that they're 8-bit looking. I actually kind of like them. They fit and look like a classic Metroid game, but they're new enough and different enough to be their own thing. Also, because it's a new game that just looks old, it doesn't run into the limitations of the original Metroid that make me hate that game so much. While there are a few places that do look similar to each other, for the most part, figuring out where you are on the map is pretty easy. So, no repeated rooms or lost corridors. Finding your way in Axiom Verge, for the most part, is pretty easy. Like I said, some obtuse map placement towards the end of the game does bring up a frustrating challenge, but for the most part, this game's pretty easy. The soundtrack is pretty good and it just sounds eerie. Again, not completely like Metroid eerie, but still sci-fi eerie. You can always feel the pressure that's against you as you race against the clock to keep a madman from destroying the world in this game. The sound effects again are top notch. They sound classic, but again, kind of new. Again, nothing to complain about in the sound. My final take on Axiom Verge is that it's a pretty decent game, but I have seen better games when it comes to these Metroid knockoffs or Metroidvania-esque games. Dusty Elysian Tales, for example, is a way better game than this, but it is worth trying if you can find it at a discounted price. This isn't one of those buy it full price games, but it's definitely worth being on your wish list and worth checking out unless you're a die-hard fan of Metroid games and you just want another one. It will be coming to the Switch soon, so if you have a Switch and haven't tried this game, it might be worth checking out if you don't have anything else to do. Not a great game, but a pretty good one. This is Tommy the Game Master thanking you for watching this review. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. I would also love to have you as a member of my community, so feel free to click that subscribe button.